Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Jeff here. Wanted to talk about a topic that pains me a lot, and that is the idea of resume building and how heavily it is overlooked in 2023. First of all, I know as software engineers, there's a lot of advice on how to get good at interviewing, such as passing the leak code questions, passing technical interviews, that kind of stuff. But the number one step that essentially is probably one of the biggest steps that I consistently see folks miss from all backgrounds is their resume. Folks have a hard time building it. There doesn't seem to be very clear courses or steps to be able to effectively do it in the modern era. And I just want to be able to shine some light on this and give you some modern tips that can help you set up your resume, even essentially like a step-to-step guide as to how you should find inspiration, how you should set these things up, and why it's important to do so. All right, so I always heard this phrase. Somebody once told me that you aren't competing with the best candidates, you're competing with the best resumes. And that hit really close to home because being someone that's been on both sides, starting out, having a terrible resume, not know how to build that out, and then all the way to the point where I've seen hundreds of resumes doing the interview process, trying to hire candidates, I cannot urge you how consistent it is that folks have bad resumes from across the board. If you don't believe me, right, if you need more convincing, one aspect that I always talk about is that remember that in software, one of the very common things is there are folks that are doing boot camps, there are folks that are self taught, that kind of thing, that are getting through the process. And so, in my opinion, especially being a boot camper myself, right, and going through that process, one of the one things that they always emphasize was setting up your resume to make the projects that you work on shine. So in the market today, there's clear indication that there are folks that are like simply only have projects that have made them on their resume outshine folks that have real job experience, that kind of thing. That's kind of the route that I want to approach here and give you some indication that setting up your resume and getting ahead on your resume and getting seen through the apply portals is a very difficult thing, but to rank and to be up there to pass some of the bots is much easier than you think because probably 80% of the candidates aren't taking a systematic approach and just doing random stuff with their resume. And you'd be absolutely shocked as to how poor some of them are, even folks that have gone to like great schools or have great educational backgrounds, that kind of thing. All right, I just want to give you a step by step guide on how I would approach these things. And I hope this helps. And I hope this at least gives you a great thought process on how you should take the steps to make a resume. All right, step number one, you should not be randomly Googling resume templates, that kind of stuff, that are generalized, that kind of thing. There's this thing, it's essentially the open source of resumes experience, and that's called LinkedIn. Go on there, find recent grads that have succeeded in the last year or so. A lot of them will still have their resume linked on their LinkedIn profile. Find the ones that still do, and then go analyze those. Analyze multiple of them. Try to find the one as many as you can. Look at things like how they're setting up their keywords, how they're setting up, where they're placing their keywords, how they're labeling their experiences. And then on top of that, just look at their formatting, that kind of stuff, and take the formatting that works for you. That's step number one to be able to find a template. Kind of a 1B is a lot of folks out there, you have a lot of project experience, especially if you're coming straight out of school, you can't fill your resume with just full work experience. One aspect that I personally think the bootcamp did incredibly well and continue to do incredibly well is to be able to sell projects on folks' resumes. So take that to your advantage. Don't just simply guess how you should display your projects, your coursework, that kind of stuff. Go find a boot camper that has success. Find folks that still have their resume attached, or look on their LinkedIn profile as to how they market and write up project experience. Look at things like how they title things, look at how they date their projects, and just find the ones that work for you. And so the idea behind here is that instead of molding your resume based off of general Google information or your career counselor, you're finding proven open source solutions that folks have set back out into the market to base your resume off of. So step number two here, I'd potentially make a specialized resume versus a general one. Remember, you can make more than one of these. My example I always use is that initially I was front end, and if I was out there on the market today, I would make two resumes. I'd make a general front end one that can specialize in like the JavaScript, React, that kind of stuff. And then I'd make a more general one for the ones that going through the typical leak codey type interviews, the job descriptions that have 12 languages that they require. Like, they want you to have Java, Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, everything at once. I would split those two things up. So one, you can expand what you can apply on, and then you can still hit those general cases where you have to do the very traditional job interviews, that kind of stuff. Okay. So after that, now that you have your resumes put together for the most part, spelling, grammar, that kind of stuff is, in my opinion, this is like a solved solution now. There's absolutely no reason why you should have any mistakes, that kind of stuff, because all you got to do here, drop it into ChatGPT, tell it to ask it to correct all your spelling mistakes, correct all your grammar mistakes, that kind of stuff, and then just take it from there, fix your mistakes. And also, right, if you're struggling with writing key experience, line items, that kind of thing, right? Even though you shouldn't be writing those based off of the top of your head, you should be looking on LinkedIn, looking at how the other people have successfully done it and basing yours off of theirs. But you can still use ChatGPT to quickly tell it to write you 10 line items based off of an experience you have, that kind of thing. And that should be very, very helpful there. Here's one of the last steps, one before the last step here. You got to be able to recognize that the number one step of any resume is to be able to pass those bots, the first layer bots. And even after you pass it, your recruiter's job is essentially just to verify that you have the skills that you say you have. So take your resume and be able to upload that. I would take your resume and upload that into job scanning websites, for example, or resume scanning websites, specifically ones where you can post in your job description, the job you're applying to, and then compare that to your current resume. I would say that those tools are still kind of like general. So I'd focus on the skills that it returns to you, such as if you're matching the keyword searches, your soft skill keyword searches, and just general match onto the resume rather than some of the other general points that I could potentially give you. So all the way up to this point, another good one is also, if you have the funds for it, jumping on LinkedIn Premium, because now you should have all your job descriptions written. You should have a resume. You should have your LinkedIn set up based on your resume. Yeah, getting LinkedIn Premium also is helpful because that's another automation tool, another bot that can, every time you look at job descriptions, it shows you where you place, your keywords that are matching, that kind of stuff, and how you are compared to other candidates. And that is also a super helpful tool to try to get yourself into that top 10% of candidates, that kind of thing, right? All right, so the very, very last step here, and this is where you should bring in someone that is an actual person. At this point, you should have no errors. Your resume should be based off of other successful candidates. You should know that it passes the bot check. For the most part, at least this first iteration has a good chance of passing the bot check. Have someone look at your resume and be able and ask them questions that are general, like, is it human readable? Ask them what they think your top skills are on your resume, that kind of stuff. I've always been told this so many times, and that is that recruiters only spend about 10 to 20 seconds on your resume. From what I see, that is totally the case. I mean, they're not spending 5-10 minutes on your resume looking over each line item. It's a quick glance, checking your skills, double checking that the bots make sense, and validating that you are who you are and you have the skills that you need. So a good indication is that you show somebody that isn't a software engineer, for example, and they say, hey, it looks like your resume, you're good at this thing called JavaScript. Seems like you have a lot of experience in that. Or if they look at it and they're like, I can't really tell what skills you're good at, that kind of thing, that's probably a bad indication. So I would say that's where the human eye comes in for trying to mimic what a recruiter would potentially see at that point. All right, very last thing here. I know the skill is painful. The skill is incredibly hard. We're already focused on doing all of the programming questions, trying to pass the technical. But trust me, this is like, you can't even get the opportunity to do that unless this skill is sharpened. Keep in mind that this is a skill that you need to keep on iterating with. If you hit 100 job applications and it doesn't come through, it doesn't work out, you need to keep on editing, fixing things until you get a better ratio of jobs that can return back to you. You'll never get all of them. In fact, you'll probably not get the majority of them. But a good ratio that I like to go to is for every 50 to 70 job listings you apply to, you should be able to get about 1 or 2 return calls for interview requests, that kind of thing. Keep in mind, you got to be creative, right? On a resume, everything is free game. Keep on iterating. Coursework, projects, new side projects, all kinds of stuff. Everything is free game, and it's up to the recruiter to be able to decide if you can do the job or not based on your resume. And so don't sell yourself short and think, hey, that class project or something like that I did doesn't count, for example, which essentially it does. It does count. And if you can't fill your resume out, think about those things that you've done to help you fill out. Of course, actual experience is much better. Real projects is actually better. There's always those barriers that you have to be able to overcome. Starting out especially, right, is like you got to use what you possibly can and display yourself in the best manner possible. If you don't get anything out of this, please just remember, trust me on this one, is folks are having a really hard time displaying themselves properly on resumes. So that is a great, almost an exploit essentially, to be able to get through on some of these portals. So just take that for what it is. If you have anyone out there that's like more experienced, that's found some like really great tips as to how to do this as well, how to like clean your resume up and or tools they use, feel free to share. If not, I'll talk to you on the next one. Latest.